Thank you, Nina, and good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to talk about how bullying behavior is embedded in school climate, what aspects of school climate are particularly important for understanding bullying behavior, and what can be done to enhance school climate so that it discourages rather than encourages bullying behavior. The idea behind school climate is that schools are more than the sum of the individuals inhabiting the schools. They have a personality of their own, and that personality influences student outcomes. I want to begin by sharing results from two recent studies that have directly linked aspects of school climate with bullying outcomes. One recent study of 95 elementary schools found that students in schools with higher student-to-teacher ratios reported greater frequency of bully victimization and reduced perceptions of safety. We'll see that other studies reinforce the importance of having fewer teachers, fewer students per teacher, and we'll try to explain why that is. Another recent study of nearly 300 schools found that students in schools with high levels of perceived teacher and school staff support are more willing to seek help for bullying and aggressive behavior. And a different analysis of those same data showed that teacher support as well as firm and consistent discipline management are related to lower levels of bullying and other forms of victimization. The findings from these two recent studies are highly consistent with a much larger set of studies dating back to the 1970s that have demonstrated very clearly that the following three aspects of school climate are important predictors of a variety of problem behaviors. They are student-to-teacher ratio and the number of different students taught by the average teacher. And these aspects of the way the school is organized are likely to directly influence sense of community or sense of belonging, part of which is, involves a shared belief about what are acceptable behaviors. And then third, consistent discipline management supporting those norms. So I'd like to spend a few minutes describing some of the earlier studies that help to establish the robustness of these findings. One of the earliest studies that helped to begin to establish the importance of school climate for understanding school disorder was the Safe School Study. This was conducted back in 1976. And that study found that among the largest predictors of victimization were the characteristics shown on the slide. Basically, larger school size and several different measures of inconsistent discipline management were related to higher levels of victimization in schools. Then 20 years later, the Department of Education and the National Institute of Justice funded another large national study of schools that similarly involved surveys of principals, teachers, and students. And that study again found that more sound discipline management was related to lower levels of student victimization and delinquency, and also that a more positive social climate measured by organizational focus, teacher morale, strong administrator leadership was related to lower levels of teacher victimization. The Safe School Study had shown that larger schools experienced more victimization. We used the national study data to try to replicate that finding and also to explore other measures related to school size. So we studied three aspects of school size: student enrollment or total number of students in the school, student-teacher ratio, and the number of different students taught by the typical teacher. What we found is that a higher student-to-teacher ratio and higher number of different students taught did increase student victimization as we expected. And these findings replicate both those from the Safe School Study and Bradshaw's more recent research. But student enrollment was related to lower victimization rates. This is interesting because Professor Cornell's more recent study of the 300 schools in Virginia found the same thing. So this suggests that it's not the total number of students in the school that matters, but the ratio of students to teachers and the way students are organized for instruction that matter. Very quickly, we also found that one of the reasons why students in schools with higher ratios of students to teachers experience more victimization is that these schools have less consensus about norms for behavior. So relating this more specifically to bullying, we see that schools that have more students per teacher might be less likely to be able to develop a consensus that bullying behavior is not acceptable. This lack of consensus about norms is one aspect of school community to which I will now turn. My colleague Allison Payne used the national study data to explore the influence of communal social organization. Communally organized schools are schools in which members know, care about, and support one another, have common goals and a sense of shared purpose, and actively contribute and feel personally committed. She found that CSO does in fact reduce student delinquency, and that the effects of CSO on delinquency are mediated by student bonding. So that is, students in high CSO schools are more attached to school, and that attachment serves to inhibit their offending behavior. Before we discuss how school climate can be altered, I want to briefly mention one other relevant study that was undertaken to understand what factors might have led to the spate of school shootings experienced in the 1990s. This study sent teams of ethnographers into 6 different communities that had experienced lethal school shootings to interview people and to collect records relevant to the incidents and to what happened in the aftermath of the incidents. The study is relevant to bullying because many of the shooters reported feeling bullied at school. So there were many interesting findings from this study, but the most relevant one for us today is that they discovered that there was a very large gulf between youth and adults in these communities. The shooters were intensely concerned about their status and protecting themselves. The adults had a very poor understanding of the children's experiences. The shooters reported that they felt that there was nowhere to turn, and specific warnings had been given and missed. So, of course, these are important findings that speak to the school social climate, to the extent that the school feels like a community to the people in the schools. These findings also, of course, reinforce the findings from the survey research that I just summarized, but using a very different methodology. So all of this research shows the importance of meaningful relationships between students and the adults in the school. So again, 40 years of research have coalesced to point to these 3 dimensions of school climate that are important predictors of offending behavior and various types of victimization, including bullying. The next question is, can these dimensions of school climate be changed? So I'll start with some discussion of some historically relevant programs. In the 1980s, the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention funded tests of 16 different ideas about how to intervene in schools to prevent delinquency. 2 of these programs focused on changing aspects of school climate that we've been discussing. But first, before I summarize these, I want to note that the methods used in these early studies don't meet the high standards of rigor that we use today. But the studies are nevertheless interesting and provide some promising ideas that could be revisited and tested more rigorously. The first program is Project Status, and this program basically reorganized the schools using a school within a school approach. It used block scheduling to create 2-hour blocks of time each day, a 2-hour block of time that was team taught by program teachers who are especially trained to use more engaging teaching methods. So for at least this portion of the day, students stayed with the same teachers and the same group of students in a small environment that was designed to promote a sense of belonging and cooperation. By keeping the students together with a smaller number of teachers for a longer time, this program directly reduced the number of different students taught by the typical teacher. And you can see on the slide that this program was studied using two schools, and the results of the evaluation suggested that it was effective for reducing a variety of forms of problem behavior. Another program funded by OJJDP was Project Path, and this focused on reorganizing the school organization to improve students' attitudes about school. The school was basically reorganized into teams of staff, students, and community members who worked together to revise school policies and practices in 5 different areas. 2 of these areas were the discipline policy and school climate. So there was a discipline policy team that focused on developing a referral system for discipline, developing handbooks that were then distributed to students, parents, and staff, and focusing on consistent enforcement of that discipline policy. And then the school climate team worked on developing and implementing a variety of different activities throughout the school year that engaged students in fun, constructive activities, things like school pride campaigns and a variety of different extracurricular activities. So basically, this program reorganized the way the school was managed and placed a great deal of emphasis on discipline management and enhancing sense of belonging in the school. This effort was studied in a study involving 9 schools over 2 years, and the results showed that it was successful, again, at reducing a number of problem behaviors. Now, in addition to these vintage programs, there are some current efforts that are not focused directly on bullying, but they do focus on those aspects of school climate that we know are important. We would be wise to borrow ideas from these programs when we're developing the next generation of bully prevention programs. The first of these is Safe Dates. It's a dating abuse prevention program for middle and high school students. It includes a 10-session curriculum as well as a theater production that's put on by the students about how an adolescent victim of dating abuse seeks help. There's also a school-wide poster contest in which students develop posters about dating violence. The posters are displayed throughout the school, and students vote on the best poster, and the 3 best posters win a cash prize. So hopefully you can see that these activities are designed to solidify norms against dating violence, and solidifying the norms is one aspect of this communal social organization idea. This program was evaluated in a randomized controlled trial of 14 schools, and it was shown to be effective for reducing these different kinds of violence perpetration. Finally, PBIS is another contemporary program that focuses on improving the school discipline system, but it also focuses on sense of community, much as did PATH in the 1980s. by creating a team of school community members who work together to improve the school over time. The team establishes expectations for positive behaviors, sets up a positive reinforcement system, and improves the clarity and consistency of discipline in the school. And this was studied using a randomized trial, studying the school-wide components of PBIS. This randomized trial involved 37 schools, and the results showed that improved organizational health, reduced aggressive behavior, and peer rejection. So to summarize, much research has led us to identify these characteristics of school climate that are important predictors of a variety of forms of problem behavior, including bullying. Several efforts have been undertaken over the years to try to alter these dimensions of school climate, but many of the studies are dated and didn't use rigorous research methods. And many of the others did use rigorous research methods, but aren't focused on bullying prevention. So this leads me to conclude that there are 3 gaps in research that we need to address. The first is to combine ideas from these earlier and contemporary school climate research to design more potent programs. Secondly, to rigorously test those programs. And third, I didn't really have time to discuss this point, but we need research on how school climate influences the effectiveness of the individually targeted interventions, such as social emotional learning programs that Catherine Bradshaw will speak about next. Thank you.
Thank you, Denise. Thank you for highlighting the importance of the adult stakeholders, principal, faculty, and staff in the schools. And now we will expand on that. Dr. Catherine Bradshaw from the University of Virginia will talk about school-based interventions.